Hi everyone, welcome back to the Zicast. I'm your host Ryan Ziaks. Today I'm joined by medical researcher Kayleigh Meehan.
Hi everyone.
Yeah, Kayleigh, thank you so much for being here. You and I, we went to high school together, and it's been a lot
Yeah.
of fun keeping up with what you're doing, and I'm really excited to get into your story. So how about you kick things off by telling us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. So, hi, I'm Kayleigh. I'm from North Haven, Connecticut, but I'm currently a master's student studying genomic medicine at Trinity College in Dublin.
Mhm.
Yeah, super excited to be here and chat a little bit.
Awesome. So yeah, how about we kind of kick things off and get into that and kind of tell us what kind of drew you into studying genomic medicine, and if you don't mind kind of explaining what that looks like.
Yeah, of course. So, my interest in science started when I was younger because my grandfather actually got diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Kind of trying to understand that a little bit better was really interesting to me. And I knew I wanted to do something medicine related, but I didn't want to be a doctor. So, I decided to study biology in my undergrad at Clemson University and kind of just dip my toes in the water where I could. And then I got some wet lab research experience, which is like stereotypical. You're wearing a lab coat and goggles and pipetting and all that good stuff. And that just really wasn't for me at all. So then I had some dry lab experience, which is more computational, using coding and Python and R and all of those things. And then, yeah, I really liked that. So decided to pursue a master's. So genomic medicine, the way that I describe it to people is kind of a mix between genetics and computer science. So we're using Python and R and these different coding programs to understand genetic data and understand human diseases a little bit better. Yeah.
And why would you say genomic medicine is such an important research field right now?
Yeah, I think with how big AI and machine learning is becoming, using that with genetics is so important because there's so much about the human genome that we know, but there's also a lot that we don't know. And helping to parse through all of that data and all of that information and using computer analyses to, streamline that process and just make it a little bit easier is definitely going to be huge in, therapeutics and different interventions and translating that into clinical settings. So I think that that's so important, and there's so much genetic data out there. I mean, our genome alone is if you were to take the DNA in one single cell, it would stretch out into almost 2 meters. And there's about 37 trillion cells in our body. So obviously, there's so much there that is relevant to research and learning how to take that information and turn it into something clinically relevant is really important.
That's a lot of cells.
Yeah.
And I'm curious because you mentioned AI as well. How do you integrate that into your studies?
Yeah, so I think just, simply it's really good at debugging code. And anyone who has coded before, you'll know that it's very specific. If you have like a space is only supposed to be in a certain part. And, there's so many little things that can go wrong. So if you create a code and then run it, and for some reason something doesn't work, using AI is a really great tool to debug that code and figure out what went wrong. Or, sometimes the error messages that you get aren't really descriptive of what's actually wrong. So using AI to just, make that process a little bit easier is really useful. And then also when I was at Clemson, I worked with a research group studying non-ketotic hyperglycemia, which is a rare genetic disorder. And my professor actually created a AI software where we would find relevant scientific papers and feed it into the software, and it would become kind of like a warehouse to store all of this information so that when we would ask questions, the generative AI would pull from the papers that we fed it instead of, pulling from Google or different websites where you don't know what's true and what's not. So yeah, just making sure that it was a little bit more validated and reliable. So I think there's a lot of great uses for AI as long as you're doing it ethically and, making sure that it's appropriate. But yeah, I think it could be a really great tool.
So really using AI for how people should be using it, which is a tool
Yeah.
for efficiency, a tool to kind of make your life easier, especially in this field where you're helping save people's lives, helping to uncover new things. And you kind of mentioned that there's so much we kind of don't know about this field yet. What is something that you're hoping to kind of uncover in your studies?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm particularly interested in neurodegeneration. So, there's a lot of diseases that arise as you get older, and a lot of them are heritable. So they're passed on from, your parents, your grandparents. So I'm really interested in those because we don't really know what's causing them. And then, especially with neurodegeneration, because it's in the brain, we can't just, take a sample out of your brain because you can't take brain from a living
Mhm.
person. So it's extremely difficult to study. And then, after a person dies, you can use those samples, but it's,
Mhm.
difficult from a functioning alive brain. So it
Mhm.
just makes it really difficult to study. So that's something that I'm really interested in. And I'm actually going to be doing my final dissertation on that, which will be really cool. And hopefully I'll learn a lot and hopefully
Mhm.
uncover something new. But
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's also where something like AI comes into play because, like, kind of like you said with the human brain, you can't, there's only so much you can do with a living person. And when someone passes away, that brain isn't active. So it's like, what is a way to kind of find that middle ground?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. So I actually just gave a presentation on a paper that was looking at ALS
Hmm.
and the certain thing that happens in people who have ALS, which is called alternative polyadenylation, which I
Hmm.
won't really get into, but pretty much what the study did
Hmm.
was they created a machine learning model and they trained it to kind of understand where this takes place. And then it was used to predict in people who might be ALS. I can't think of the word, who might develop ALS.
Hmm.
So I think something to kind of bridge that gap could be creating machine learning models and computational models and training them with relevant information. And then they can kind of do that hard work for you and kind of bridge that gap between, we can't actually take a sample from this person, but using what we know about science and how the brain works, can we create this model that can accurately predict what might happen?
Hmm. And where do you see these type of models evolving to in the future? I know it's something that might even be impossible to say right now, but just from your experience.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think right now there's still a lot of them are just in early stages, but I think, if we can kind of work out the kinks
Mhm.
and make it a more routine screening or a more routine practice, it could help to, I mean, especially with neurodegeneration, kind of catch these things early on and
Mhm.
start treatment earlier or, use these to help with coming up with treatments and therapies for these sorts of things. So I think a lot of
Mhm.
them are still in early stages, but I think that, I mean, to me, it's super interesting and super cool that we can kind of train our computers to do something like that. And I think
Mhm.
it could be really useful and novel in different diseases that we don't have treatments for.
Yeah, and it shows how far we've come truly. And I'm curious if someone kind of found out that they were predisposed to something like I know it's a hereditary, but something like Alzheimer's, something like ALS. How could they go about trying to better their odds of fighting it, if that would be the word to use?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I know a lot of the treatments for neurodegenerative disorders, they don't actually treat it. It's more of kind of slowing that process.
Mhm.
So I think honestly, like the most useful thing that I can think was just starting treatment earlier.
Mhm.
I think a lot of the times when people get diagnosed with these things, they progress so quickly that
Mhm.
it's really difficult to stop it, and there's no treatments yet. So, yeah, that's something I think on the research side of things, it's so important to not only find treatments to these things, but find out what is actually causing these different
Mhm.
diseases and disorders so that, maybe we can use genomic testing to find places in the genome where you might be predisposed to this and, what steps can we take to help you to either prevent it from happening altogether or at least, creating a later onset.
Especially because I feel like a lot of people find out that they're predisposed older where they don't have as much time. But now, kind of like with the things you're doing, people are able to find out earlier if they take the steps to do so. And I want I know a lot of this is a lot of this work, I should say, is very complex. What has been the most difficult part of being in this field?
That's a good question. I think, especially as an early researcher, and I'm just in my master's, so all of this is relatively new to me. It's definitely overwhelming the amount of data that's out there and just making sure that, you're looking at first of all, the right things. And then second of all, when you're finding this information, knowing what you're looking at, because there's so many publicly available data sets where it's so useful because, everything is there and you can go in and search up a particular gene and find out anything that you want to know about it. But just knowing where to start, I think, is one of the most challenging parts. And then, yeah, kind of just synthesizing everything that's known already and figuring out like, okay, how can I find something new or taking all of this information, how could I kind of extend this path and, figure out what's going on.
All of this, I know we've dived into it before, but all of this kind of has real life impact. How have you seen it kind of impact real world patient care firsthand?
One of the classes that I'm taking now is called precision medicine. So,
Mhm.
precision medicine or personalized medicine is pretty much tailoring different, you know, treatments, disease prevention, diagnoses to individuals and their individual unique genetic makeup. So, especially this research, understanding how we can learn more about people's genomes is really important because it can make this personalized medicine piece more useful in the clinical setting and more widespread, which could definitely help with, different cancer therapeutics or neurodegenerative diseases. So I think that that's really important. And then at Clemson, with the non-ketotic hyperglycemia research that I did, it was actually we worked with a family who had two children who were diagnosed with NKH. So that was really special, just kind of seeing their firsthand experience and, helping where we can and seeing that it does have a real world impact and you are actually helping people who this is their entire life and their day in and day out, they're dealing with this. So, yeah.
Because it's always different when you're seeing, numbers on a computer screen or data versus a real life human being who your work is helping change their life for the better or save their life.
Yeah.
So it must be, what's that kind of feeling like seeing your work have a direct impact on someone you can see?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think especially it's kind of difficult to see that impact when you're a student
Mhm.
because most of what you're doing is sitting in lectures and, practicing this stuff and using mock data sets and really just learning how to do it. So it really does just seem like numbers on a computer screen. But I don't know, that was a really special experience because we were hearing, I mean, the mom of these children were coming in and talking to us and, okay, these are their symptoms and this is what we just used for treatment. Why did that work? Like it worked, but we don't know why it worked. So we need to figure that out. So I think that was really reaffirming that I was like, okay, like I'm doing something useful and it's interesting to me, and I'm seeing how this is impacting other people. Because I think, taking science classes and hard math classes, it's so easy to just kind of lose motivation and, like this is tough. Why am I doing this?
Mhm.
So yeah, that was really reaffirming to me. I was like, okay, I know I'm in the right spot.
So because seeing the end result can kind of change the journey in that way or make the
Yeah.
journey feel more worth it, I guess I should say. We were able to take these studies internationally and go to Ireland. I wore green just for the
Yes.
occasion. Can you tell us kind of like what led you to wanting to go to Ireland and study there? And then kind of like how has that experience shaped how you view medical research?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, while I was at Clemson, I did a semester abroad at the University of Nicosia in Cyprus and got to travel all around and went to Ireland. And I have family who lives here, so I met them for the first time and saw where my grandfather grew up, and it was really special. And then fast forward to when I was applying for master's programs and different higher education programs, I didn't really know where I wanted to end up. So I kind of just, cast a wide net and applied to a bunch of different places, and then ended up getting accepted into Trinity and figured, when else can I move to Ireland for a year and experience something completely different? So yeah, that's what kind of led me to want to study here. In terms of how it's altered my view of medical research, I think kind of just reaffirming that wherever you are in the world, everyone is trying to, do something similar. Like everyone is using similar techniques and similar models. to try to help people and figure out how we can, aid in these diseases. So that's been really special. And then just hearing from a bunch of different professionals in the field. My classes are co-taught by people who work at Trinity, people who work at St. James Hospital in Dublin. So yeah, I hear from such a broad array of people with different interests, and it's just really special hearing about what people are passionate in. And yeah,
And I'm curious as to how your experience in Ireland has it shaped the way you see your research any differently?
that's a good question. I think doing research in South Carolina and in Ireland are two very different places, but it all boils down to the same thing where, we're looking at what's already known and what's already out there, and we're using these different techniques and these different models. And at the end of the day, we just want to learn more and figure out how can we help people and, what can we do to understand these diseases better and figure out some sort of treatment. So I think it's been really reaffirming that, everyone wants to see you succeed and do a good job and help people, and they're there to mentor you and guide you through that. And then especially taking classes, a lot of my courses are co-taught by faculty at Trinity who are doing research, and then also clinicians and researchers at St. James Hospital in Dublin. So everyone comes in with a different background and a different passion. So it's been super great hearing from everyone who, one lecture you're learning about breast cancer, the next one you're learning about Prader-Willi disease. And, these two things can be more different, but just hearing how passionate people are about their work and about their research is really motivating.
Yeah, I feel like it makes you a better all-around
Yeah.
researcher to hear about those things and meet these different people who've seen probably so much and have been able to do so much. So, and what was your first impression when you first arrived to Ireland?
So my first impression, and my friends and my mom make fun of me for this because I do this with everywhere I go to visit. I'm like, oh, I could totally see myself living here. I love it here. So yeah, that was my first impression was definitely like, I love it here. I'm so excited to be here. Yeah, I definitely have like a silver lining when it comes to that kind of stuff. There were
Mhm.
some things that was tough, obviously moving to a different country, but I think just I got really wrapped up in the excitement of it and just exploring that. Yeah, I was just really excited to be here.
The experience of studying abroad, has that differed at all from what you've expected?
I would say a little bit because I think when I was studying abroad in Cyprus, it was more about traveling to as many different places as I could. Whereas here, I wanted to really feel settled here and at home here. So yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, for one, I'm here longer. I'm here for the year instead of Cyprus. I was there for 4 months. But also, it's been really great just getting into a routine and, kind of finding my place here. So yeah, I would say it's different a little bit, but overall it's been just an adjustment, but an exciting adjustment. And yeah,
Any culture shocks?
not really.
Mhm.
I feel like coming from an Irish family,
Mhm.
like family is super big, and it's so great that I have family here because I feel like they just take care of me whenever I need anything, which is so like convenient and really nice. But yeah, I wouldn't say any huge culture shocks.
And what's your typical day look like?
Yeah, so my typical day, I really like to spend some time outside. And I guess actually a culture shock is no matter the weather here, there's always people outside, like in
Mhm.
the parks, exercising, doing whatever. And I think just because the weather is always kind of gray and rainy, people have to like work around it. So yeah, I like to go outside. So I'll usually start my day by going for a walk and just having some sort of morning routine before I go to class.
Mhm.
And then normally I have class from about 10 to 5. So yeah, the majority of my day is spent in class, but my program is really great. There's, I think, 11 of us. So we've all gotten pretty close because we spend every day together in class all day. So yeah, that's always fun to hang out with everyone. And we'll get like a break for lunch and get to just chat and chill. And then afterwards, I usually like to cook something or do a workout class or go to a pub with some friends. So yeah,
What are the pubs like?
they're really great. It's just such like a chill vibe. I'm the type of person where I just love to go and, play a card game and hang out and chat. And that's totally the vibe here. So yeah, I love it.
Mhm.
I'm not a Guinness drinker though, so
Yeah, yeah, I've heard that's speaking of contentious things, I always know that's contentious amongst a lot of people. Any fun experiences with any locals or anything like that?
Yeah, so actually almost half of my class is from Ireland.
Mm,
So it's been really cool just, I don't know, hearing how their life experience is different from mine. And they're from different parts of Ireland, so they all have slightly different accents and,
mhm.
use slightly different lingo. So it's been super fun hearing like the different lingo and picking up on some differences.
Any other fun differences with those with the lingo or anything you've heard?
I would say like some big lingo here is what's the crack? That's every time I see like the people in my class, they'll walk in, they're like, oh, what's the crack? And it's just like, oh, what's up? Or
Yeah.
like good crack. It's like, oh, that was good fun. Like we went out and had a good time. So yeah, just funny things where they'll say it and I'm like, wait, what? What does that mean?
That's a new one. I've never I've never
Really?
heard of
Yeah.
that. So it's kind of like what's happening, but
Yeah.
crack
Mhm.
instead. And because I was gonna ask, what's a small cultural detail you've grown to love?
I mean, I love all the lingo and just hearing
Mhm,
it. I think it's so fun. I also love, like I was saying before, how the weather doesn't stop people from doing things and hanging out and spending time outside. And then just overall, I think people are so friendly. I think that's just such an Irish culture thing is,
mhm,
even with my family, like they're so happy when I stay there and they can take care of me and cook me
mhm.
dinner and just get to hang out. I think it's just such a welcoming community, which is really great being an international student.
Kind of what's the biggest challenge you've had when studying abroad, and how did you go about handling it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest challenge was when I first got here, I had about a week before classes started. So it was kind of just navigating, I wasn't really in a routine yet. I didn't know anyone. So I really had to like push through and put myself out there, which I'm not the best at doing. So it was definitely uncomfortable at first, but I don't know, it was a lot of exploring and finding new places, which was a lot of fun, but also frustrating because, things are just a little bit different. Like, there's not a Target that you could go to get every single thing on your shopping list. It's like, if you need this, you need to go to one store. And if you need this, you need to go to a different store. So just little things like that, that it was just more difficult. And this was also my first time living in a city. So, you need to go to the grocery store and walk your groceries home. So you can't get as much as you were if you were going to put them in your car and drive them home.
Mhm.
So just little things. I think that was the biggest challenge, just the adjustment, and then not yet having my group of people that I could really rely on here. Because especially with the time difference too, I'd be up and doing my stuff, and everyone at home is asleep. So
No, I definitely
um,
understand the struggles of going from a small town like North Haven, Connecticut to living in a city. So I could very
yeah.
much relate to the struggles of like having to learn how to get around, and especially for you being in a new country. I'm sure that was difficult, but that's something you kind of picked up on, which builds perfectly into the next question, which is, have you learned anything about yourself from this experience that's surprised you?
I think the biggest thing I learned about myself is I'm pretty outgoing, which I never considered myself an outgoing person at all. Actually, I've always considered myself very shy and introverted. But yeah, I think being here, I kind of had to be outgoing because I didn't know anyone. And then two, I kind of realized it's so special just chatting with people and being from different places, learning about how their life is different from mine, and, even like outside of just making friends in class, like I'm going to get coffee, I'll strike up a conversation with the person, at the register, and it's just really special to do those sorts of things. So I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned about myself.
Do you have any specific favorite memories from your time in Ireland so far that you'd want to share?
Yeah, I think just like every day hanging out with the people in my class, I feel like we always just end up having a good time and it's nothing ever too crazy. It's just, being together and chatting and I don't know, it feels very homey, which I
Mhm,
really, really like because it makes me feel like I've kind of found my place. And then also one of my favorite memories was a friend of mine had come to visit and I was so excited to, show her around and show her my favorite places. And she told me, like, you seem just so in your element right now.
mhm,
And that was really special because I don't know, I feel like Dublin is so me and I'm so happy to be here
mhm.
and I love it here. So hearing that from another person who picked up on it was so cool and just like totally made my day.
It was a sign of growth too, and that sometimes you could kind of see things like that from other people, seeing somebody else's perspective. It makes you think, wow, I've really come so far. And to take you even more back, I want to ask you about your experience at Clemson and what that was like.
Yeah, I loved Clemson. I mean, it was very different going from Connecticut to South Carolina, but I
Mhm.
think when I was looking at colleges, I just wanted to experience something new and,
Mhm.
see if I liked it. And if not, I could figure it out. But I'm so glad that I did. So yeah, I think similarly with this, I went to Clemson not knowing anyone, so I really had to put myself out there and make friends. And I was so fortunate that I've made such a good group of friends from Clemson, and we're still all pretty close, which is really great. But yeah, Clemson was amazing. I had a really great group of mentors there and got a lot of experience, not only academically, but, personally and going to the football games
Mhm.
and, having that school spirit. So it was really special.
And I'm sure, like you said, kind of a great stepping stone for where you are now.
Love to work for like a biotech company or
Mhm.
a pharmaceutical company. Definitely doing some type of medical research, but I'm not really sure which.
What kind of advice would you give to anyone wanting to study abroad?
Yeah, I would say 1000% do it, go for it, be okay with being uncomfortable and feeling so stupid at times. I think it's such a learning experience, and there's so much that you can learn from just trial and error and putting yourself in these situations. Like, even something as seemingly like simple as using public transportation. I mean, in North Haven, Connecticut, I never used public transportation. And then I had to, come here and learn how to use the bus and the Lewis that they have here. And I've never done those things before. So it's so uncomfortable. And then, you learn and you talk to people and you figure out how to do it. So yeah, I would say one, just being okay with, the discomfort that comes with studying abroad. And then also just putting yourself out there. Don't be afraid to go alone. If you haven't made friends yet, go to a coffee shop by yourself and talk to someone, or I don't know, go for a walk, explore somewhere new. I think that you can meet so many great people by just, not staying with your little group and kind of venturing out and not being afraid to be independent at times.
New things are always scary, but sometimes they're the best things for us, like this kind of
Hmm.
experience was for you. So, if anything, what you said was a proponent of trying something new. And kind of on the flip side of that advice, I want to ask you what advice you'd have for anyone wanting to study genomic medicine or any medical research field.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I don't know, just don't be afraid to, if you don't know something. I think when I was starting out, I was so nervous that if I was, especially doing research at Clemson, if I didn't know how to do something, I was embarrassed to tell the person. Meanwhile, you've never done these things before. Of course, you're not going to randomly know how to run a PCR test. You've never been taught that before. And that was something actually one of my cousins had told me because she does medical research at Tufts. And she told me, don't be afraid to say, I don't know how to do that. And you'll get taught how to do it. So I think just being honest with yourself and honest with the people that you're working with, because what I've learned is everyone wants to help you out and everyone wants to see you succeed. So if you're honest about that and not afraid to, go outside your comfort zone and ask for help, that's going to help you so much in the long run. And then also, kind of like I was saying before, the really special thing about medical research is there's so many different avenues that you could take. So whatever niche interest you have, find someone who has that same niche interest and, have them be a mentor to you and help you and figure out how to navigate that. Yeah, I just think it's so special that there's so many different routes that you can take. So don't be afraid to, dip your toes in the water and see what you like, see what you don't like. And yeah.
To continue to learn more about you, kind of get into some fun personal questions. What's some things people might not know about you, like fun facts?
I think, oh, one thing is I love to read. I'm a huge reader, and I don't know, especially like taking public transportation in Dublin, that's my time where I'm like always reading. So yeah, that's super fun. And at least in high school, I hated reading, and I don't think I read a single book that we were supposed to. So it's funny now that that is like my go-to hobby.
It's funny the things we pick up on too as we mature, the things we don't like become the things that we do like. But
Mhm.
to perfectly build into our next question, what's one thing you love and one thing you strongly dislike?
I would say for love, and this kind of ties into like my love for traveling, but I love finding new coffee shops and restaurants. I'm a huge food person and I love like new dessert places and new coffee shops. Actually, my New Year's resolution for this year is to go to a new coffee shop every single week. So I've been slowly ticking off lots and lots of coffee shops in Dublin. So yeah, I love that. And then something I strongly dislike, definitely being late. That is one thing about me. I'm always obnoxiously early, and my friends and my family make fun of me to no end about that, but I just will never be late. And that's something that's funny about being in Ireland is I feel like just European culture in general, everyone runs late. And that is something that I have not adapted to, and I don't know that I will ever adapt to.
Yeah, that is an interesting thing. That something I've heard is the difference of work culture in Europe versus the US. Can you
Yeah.
elaborate on that at all?
Yeah, I think honestly, like they just have such a better balance of
Hmm.
your entire life is not your job.
Hmm.
And I don't know, I think that that's so special. And especially having family here who does work, they still go on vacations and they take time off. And I think I don't know, a lot of it is tied to like mental health and taking care of yourself and not putting your mental health on the back burner to succeed in your job. So yeah, I think that that is definitely different.
And has that shaped the way that you approach your career? Let's say you move back to the States, will you kind of keep that in mind as you move forwards?
Yeah, I think that I definitely will. I think I definitely consider myself a workaholic, and
Hmm.
especially doing remote work, like if I'm doing research on my computer and I don't have to go in person somewhere, I have a really hard time kind of like cutting myself off and setting that aside and doing something else because once I get started on something, I just like to work on it and, make sure that it's to the best of my ability. But that's something that I'm working on becoming better about just because I think it's so ingrained in my brain from, not only US culture, but just like how I am personally. So yeah, I think that's definitely a good practice to have and something that I want to incorporate when I find a job and, do research more seriously.
And what's your go-to coffee place in Dublin?
Ooh, that's a good question. Lately, I've really been loving this coffee shop called Jolly in Stony Batter. So it's actually super close to my apartment, which is really nice. But I went there today and their coffee is amazing. And then near Trinity, there's Bread 41, which is a really, really nice bakery and coffee shop. And the line is always ridiculous, which is, I don't know, I guess how you know it's pretty good, but that's one of my favorites too.
Yeah, if the locals are there, that's how you know it's good. That's a
Yeah.
good way I found when I've traveled. So I'm glad that jolly makes you jolly. As we
Yeah.
move forwards in the interview, what are some of your hopes and dreams personally or professionally?
Yeah, I think personally, I just want to like explore as much as I can and meet people and travel to different places and learn as much about the world and myself as I can while I'm young and I'm healthy and I'm able.
Mhm.
And then professionally, I just hope to find a job that I feel really passionately about. I think I don't know, I don't want to get stuck in that loop where you don't like your job and then it just becomes work instead of something that you really care about. So
Mhm.
I'm really fortunate now that the research that I'm doing, I feel passionately about. And I just hope that when I find a job, it's something that I really enjoy doing and I feel like I'm making a difference and helping people. And yeah.
And what kind of a job do you think it would be, like something in the research field?
I'd love to work for like a biotech company or
Mhm.
a pharmaceutical company. Definitely doing some type of medical research, but I'm not really sure which area I want to lean towards yet.
The
I'll
time,
unfortunately have to figure that out soon.
yeah, yeah, but time will tell, and all those things will figure themselves out. And ask you a really fun one: what are some of your favorite movies and why they resonate with you?
Oh, that's a good question. My all-time favorite movie is Good Will Hunting.
Mhm.
I think just because I love like the psychological aspect of it and I love movies that after it's done, like it sticks with you and you feel like motivated and like emotional, but in a good way. So yeah, that one is definitely my favorite. I love the Hunger Games movies. I just love the dystopian sci-fi, that type of vibe. And then I feel like Pitch Perfect is a classic too, just because it's fun and I don't know, I used to like dance and sing in high school, so I appreciate those types of things.
And Good Will Hunting, a very Irish Boston. So I guess it kind of
Yeah,
all comes twofold. And overall,
exactly.
and overall, Kayleigh, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today, for sharing all these interesting things.
Yeah,
And I
thank
want to ask
you.
if you have any motivational words or any plugs or anything you want to leave the audience with.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say my top tip and something that I've learned is don't I know sometimes it's easy to feel like you're kind of boxed into like a particular area, or you grow up in a small town and you need to like stick to how people know you and you're kind of afraid to branch out, but step outside of your comfort zone, step outside of that box and just go, see the world, explore more about yourself. And yeah, I think that that's really special.
Incredible. And that's a really great theme for this episode. And thank you for
Yeah.
sharing all these interesting things with this very fascinating research field that people not, might not think about. And then taking a big leap, like going to Ireland, doing something new, which is very inspiring for myself and for sure very inspiring for people listening. So thank you so much for your time, Kayleigh. Of
Yeah, thank you, Ryan.
course. And as always, this is Ryan Ziaks with the Zicast, where everyone has a story. Signing off. Thank you so much for listening.